The crystal glass shattered against the marble floor, and with it, my carefully constructed silence. For years I'd swallowed my mother's cruelty like bitter medicine, believing it was somehow deserved, somehow normal. But when Malcolm slapped my daughter's hand and my mother whispered, she deserved it, through a smile that never reached her eyes, something fundamental shifted inside me. 10-year-old Ivy's tears weren't just water. They were acid, dissolving the chains of obligation that had kept me tethered to this family for 38 years. As laughter rippled through the dining room, I realized a simple truth. Sometimes protecting your child means burning every bridge you've spent a lifetime maintaining. And I had matches to spare. I never wanted to go back. I'd left the house I grew up in for a reason, but my brother's wedding dragged us back into the lion's den. The invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 3 weeks before I finally opened it. Malcolm's wedding. Another family gathering where I'd be the outsider, the one who never quite measured up. I traced my finger over the gold embossed lettering, feeling that familiar knot form in my stomach. Mom, are we going to Uncle Malcolm's wedding? Ivy's voice pulled me from my thoughts. My 10-year-old daughter stood in the doorway, her curious blue eyes fixed on the cream envelope in my hands. I don't know, sweetie. But I did know. We would go, because that's what families do. Even broken ones like mine. I'm Elise Morgan, 38 years old, freelance architect, and single mother to the most amazing little girl in the world. I design beautiful spaces for other people while trying to build a safe one for Ivy and myself. The irony isn't lost on me. After my messy divorce 3 years ago, I threw myself into creating a life as far removed from my childhood as possible. But now, we were heading back to Heathrow, my mother's sprawling countryside estate with its perfectly manicured lawns and cold, hollow rooms. A beautiful place with deeply ugly memories. We're almost there, I told Ivy as we turned onto the long, tree-lined driveway. My sister Wren sat quietly in the passenger seat beside me. At 34, she was the peacekeeper of the family, the one who never rocked the boat. It looks like a castle. Ivy pressed her face against the window, her eyes wide with wonder. I caught Wren's gaze, a silent understanding passing between us. It's just a house, Ivy. A big one. My mother, Gloria Harrison, stood on the front steps as we pulled up, her silver blonde hair swept into an immaculate updo, her posture rigid as a steel beam. She didn't move to help as we unloaded our luggage, just watched with critical eyes. "You're late," were the first words out of her mouth. No hello, no hug for her granddaughter. "Traffic," I replied simply. Gloria's eyes narrowed. "You always did have trouble with punctuality, Elise. I see some things never change." She turned her attention to Ivy. "My, haven't you grown? You look just like your mother at that age." Hopefully without the attitude. I felt my daughter shrink beside me, her initial excitement dimming. I placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "It's good to see you too, Mom," I said, keeping my voice even. Inside, the house was exactly as I remembered, imposing, perfectly decorated, and utterly devoid of warmth. Family photos lined the walls, carefully curated to show the image Gloria wanted to present to the world. The happy, successful Harrison family. What a joke. "Ivy, don't touch that," Gloria snapped as my daughter reached for a crystal figurine. "Those are antiques, not toys." "Sorry," Ivy whispered, pulling her hand back as if burned. "I'll show you to your rooms," Wren intervened, giving Ivy a gentle smile. As we followed Wren up the grand staircase, I heard the front door open and my brother's booming voice fill the entryway. "Where's my little sister?" Malcolm called out, his tone artificially bright. I turned to see him standing at the bottom of the stairs, arms outstretched, his trademark charming smile in place. At 40, he was the golden child, the successful businessman who could do no wrong in our mother's eyes. "Malcolm," I acknowledged with a nod. "Come down here and give your big brother a hug." He beckoned. "And is that little Ivy?" "Not so little anymore." Reluctantly, I descended the stairs with Ivy trailing behind me. Malcolm embraced me briefly, the scent of expensive cologne overwhelming. "You're looking thin, Elise," he said, holding me at arm's length. "Divorce suits you." I forced a smile. Congratulations on the engagement. Malcolm turned his attention to Ivy. There's my niece. You've grown into quite the young lady. He ruffled her hair, and Ivy beamed at the attention. You're just as loud as your mother was. Hopefully you'll learn to tone it down better than she did. The light in Ivy's eyes dimmed, and I felt that familiar helplessness rise inside me. The subtle jabs, the masked insults. It was starting already. We should get settled in, I said, taking Ivy's hand. It's been a long drive. Of course, Malcolm waved us away. Katrina will be here for dinner. She can't wait to meet everyone. Upstairs, in the guest room we'd been assigned, I helped Ivy unpack. The room was impeccably decorated but sterile, like a high-end hotel suite rather than a place where families stayed. Uncle Malcolm is funny, Ivy said quietly. What do you mean, sweetie? She shrugged. He smiled, but it didn't feel like a real smile. Out of the mouths of babes. Sometimes adults smile even when they don't feel like it. Why would they do that? I sat on the edge of the bed, patting the space beside me. When Ivy joined me, I said, sometimes it's easier than telling the truth. That sounds like lying. I couldn't help but smile. You're right. It is. Dinner that night was excruciating. Gloria had arranged a formal meal to welcome Malcolm's fiancée, Katrina Adams, a willowy blonde woman with a nervous smile who seemed to hang on Malcolm's every word. Elise, Gloria said from the head of the table, I noticed you haven't asked Malcolm about his business expansion. He's opening 3 new locations next year. Congratulations, I said automatically. That's impressive. Malcolm launched into a detailed explanation of his growing retail empire, while Gloria beamed with pride. Beside me, Ivy pushed her food around her plate, clearly bored. Ivy, elbows off the table, Gloria reprimanded. Didn't your mother teach you proper manners? Sorry, Ivy mumbled, straightening in her chair. She's doing fine, Mom, I interjected. Gloria raised an eyebrow. I'm merely pointing out areas that need improvement. That's how children learn. She's 10, I said, feeling my patience wear thin.
Exactly.
By 10, you knew better than to slouch at the dinner table. I bit my tongue. This wasn't the hill to die on, not on our first night. Wren's husband, David, cleared his throat. The food is delicious, Gloria. You've outdone yourself. I glanced at my sister, noting how she seemed to shrink beside her husband. Wren had always been vibrant and creative, but the woman sitting across from me was a shadow of that girl. David placed his hand over hers on the table, a gesture that looked possessive rather than affectionate. After dinner, I tucked Ivy into bed. Just a few days, I promised her. Then we'll go home. Grandma doesn't like me very much, does she? Ivy asked. My heart broke a little. Grandma has trouble showing her feelings sometimes. It's not about you. Okay. She didn't sound convinced. Once Ivy was asleep, I crept downstairs for a glass of water. The house was quiet, most of the lights dimmed. In the kitchen, I found Wren sitting alone at the island counter, nursing a cup of tea. Can't sleep? I asked. She startled slightly. Just thinking.
He sat beside her.
About. Wren traced the rim of her cup. Do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like with a different mother? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken pain. All the time, I admitted. That night, I dreamed of being 16 again, standing in the middle of my high school cafeteria. Gloria was there, towering over me, her voice cutting through the silence. How dare you embarrass me like this? Can't you do anything right? I couldn't remember what I'd done wrong, but the shame was crushing. Everyone was staring, laughing. I woke with a start, sheets damp with sweat. For a moment, I was disoriented until the familiar weight of dread settled in my chest. I was back at Heathrow. Slipping from bed, I checked on Ivy. She was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the undercurrents swirling around her. I stood there watching her breathe, torn between packing our bags and fleeing in the night or sticking it out for Malcolm's wedding. We can do this, I whispered to myself. Just a few more days. But as I crawled back into bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming. Morning sun streamed through the French doors of Gloria's conservatory, casting long shadows across the brunch table. It should have been beautiful. The delicate china, the fresh flowers, the spread of pastries and fruit. Instead, it felt like the calm before a storm. "More coffee, Elise?" Katrina offered, holding the silver pot. Malcolm's fiancé seemed eager to play hostess, perhaps trying to win Gloria's approval. "Please," I said, grateful for her attempt at normalcy. Ivy sat beside me, nibbling on a croissant and watching the adults with careful eyes. She'd chosen a pretty blue dress this morning, one that matched her eyes, and had asked me to braid her hair. "I want to look nice for family pictures," she'd explained. Gloria dominated the conversation, regaling Katrina with stories of Malcolm's accomplishments while pointedly ignoring mine. When Katrina tried to include me, asking about my architectural work, Gloria swiftly redirected. "Speaking of dramatic phases," she said with a tight smile, "did Malcolm tell you about Elise's teenage years?" Goodness, the drama. She went through a phase where she dyed her hair black and wore the most dreadful clothes. "Mom," I warned quietly.
What?
"It's just family history." Gloria waved dismissively. "Elise was always our sensitive one. Everything was a crisis, wasn't it, dear?" I felt Ivy's eyes on me, curious about this version of her mother she'd never known. "I was a teenager," I said simply. "Everyone goes through phases." "Yes, but most grow out of them," Gloria replied. "Some of us more successfully than others." The morning dragged on, each minute feeling like an hour. By noon, the extended family began to arrive for lunch, cousins, aunts, uncles, all orbiting around Gloria like planets around a cold, distant star. The dining room buzzed with conversation as the catering staff served an elaborate lunch. I sat with Ivy, trying to keep to ourselves, when my cousin Danica slipped into the empty chair beside me. "Surviving so far?" she asked under her breath. I managed a smile. Danica had always been an ally in family gatherings, having experienced her own share of Gloria's criticism. "Barely," I admitted. Across the table, Malcolm was holding court, describing his latest business triumph. Katrina gazed at him adoringly while Gloria beamed with pride. The perfect mother-son duo. "Ivy," Gloria called suddenly. "Sit up straight, dear. First impressions matter, and you're meeting most of the family for the first time." Ivy immediately straightened her spine, her face flushing with embarrassment at being singled out. "She's fine, Mom," I said quietly. Gloria's eyes narrowed.
"I'm merely helping."
"Someone has to." The tension at the table was palpable. Ivy, trying to divert attention, reached for her water glass. In her nervousness, her small hand knocked against the heavy crystal goblet. It toppled, spilling water across the pristine white tablecloth before crashing to the floor. The room fell silent.
"I'm sorry."
Ivy gasped, already reaching for her napkin. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Malcolm, seated next to Ivy, grabbed her wrist. "What did you do?" he hissed, his charming facade cracking. Then, with a swift movement, he slapped the back of her hand, hard. The sound echoed in the silent room. Ivy's eyes widened in shock, then filled with tears. Her lower lip trembled as she looked up at her uncle, confusion and hurt written plainly across her face. I didn't mean to," she whispered. Then came the sound that would haunt me for years to come, a cold, dismissive chuckle from the head of the table. "She deserved it," Gloria said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. Just like her mother, always looking for attention. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the room, family members glancing at each other, then at me, waiting to see my reaction. I sat frozen, a lifetime of conditioning keeping me rooted to my chair. Ivy's eyes found mine, pleading for protection, for explanation, for anything. Finally, my body obeyed my racing mind. I reached for Ivy, pulling her close. "It was an accident," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "She's just a child." "A child who needs to learn consequences," Malcolm replied, his businessman smile back in place, as if he hadn't just struck my daughter. "Accidents happen, I insisted, standing up. Ivy, come with me. I led her from the dining room, aware of the eyes following our exit, the whispers already beginning. In the hallway bathroom, I locked the door behind us and knelt before my daughter. Let me see your hand, I said gently. Ivy's small hand was red where Malcolm had slapped it. More concerning was the vacant look in her eyes, the way she'd stopped crying almost immediately, a child who'd learned too quickly to hide her pain. Why did Uncle Malcolm hit me? She asked in a small voice. Because he was wrong, I said firmly. He was wrong, and Grandma was wrong, and everyone who laughed was wrong. You didn't deserve that, Ivy. No one ever deserves to be hit, especially not for an accident. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe me. How could she, when a room full of adults had just shown her otherwise? I want to go home, she whispered. I know, sweetheart. I pulled her into a hug, feeling her small body tremble against mine. Soon, looking in the mirror above the sink, I saw my own face, pale, shocked, but also something else. In my eyes was a reflection of my younger self, the girl who had learned to stay quiet, to take the criticism, to believe she deserved the treatment she received. And suddenly, with crystal clarity, I knew I couldn't let Ivy become that girl. Something inside me snapped, not in defeat, but in resolve. For years, I'd told myself that silence was easier, that distance was protection enough. But now I saw that by allowing Gloria and Malcolm to treat me as they always had, I was teaching Ivy to accept the same treatment. The cycle ended today. When I returned to my room with Ivy, I noticed my laptop open on the desk where she'd been using it earlier for her homeschool presentation. The blue light of the Zoom window was still active, my professional account that I used for client meetings. With a jolt, I realized the camera and microphone had been on during lunch. The meeting had been scheduled with my coworkers to discuss a project, but I'd forgotten to join or cancel it. Heart-pounding, I checked the participant list. 5 of my colleagues had been in the meeting, including Natalie Evans, a friend who worked part-time as a local reporter. They had heard everything. I downloaded the recording without thinking twice. Not to use yet, but to have. Evidence. Proof that I wasn't imagining things, that I wasn't overreacting, that what happened was real and wrong. That evening, I found Ren sitting alone on the back porch, staring out at the darkening garden. Can I join you? I asked. She nodded, making space on the bench. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years between us. I saw what happened at lunch, she finally said. With Ivy. And you said nothing. I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. Ren's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to, but... She trailed off, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder. I've been documenting things. For years. Every time Malcolm explodes, every cruel thing Mom says. I stared at the device. Why? Because I needed to know I wasn't crazy, that it was really happening. She handed me the recorder. There's more. I have files saved. Things Mom has said about you, about Ivy. Things Malcolm has done when no one was watching. I held the recorder carefully, as if it might burn me. Why are you giving me this? Ren looked at me directly, more resolve in her eyes than I'd seen in years. Because I'm tired of being afraid. And because what happened to Ivy today, her voice broke. No one stood up for us when we were kids. Someone needs to stand up for her. The next morning dawned bright and clear, at odds with the darkness I felt gathering around us. Gloria had scheduled a family photo session in the garden, the perfect opportunity to showcase the happy, united Harrison family. Everyone on the terrace, the photographer directed, arranging us against the backdrop of Gloria's prized rose garden. Family in the center, please. I stood stiffly beside Ren, with Ivy positioned in front of me. Gloria took her place at the center, naturally, with Malcolm and Katrina on her other side. Closer together, the photographer called. Let's show some family love. Gloria's arm snaked around my waist, pulling me against her side. Her fingers dug into my hip, a warning disguised as affection. Smile, darling, she whispered. Let's not make a scene. I plastered on my best fake smile, the one I'd perfected over decades of family gatherings. Beside me, Ivy did the same, and the similarity struck me like a physical blow. I was teaching her this: how to pretend, how to perform, how to survive. Perfect, the photographer exclaimed. One big, happy family. After the photos, Ren pulled me aside. Meet me in the guest house in 20 minutes, she whispered. Bring your laptop. The guest house was a small cottage at the far end of the property, originally built for the groundskeeper but now used for storage and occasional overflow guests. When I arrived, Ren was already there, her own laptop open on a dusty table. I downloaded everything from the recorder, she said without preamble. There's a lot, Elise. Years worth. She connected a small flash drive to my computer. This folder is from last Christmas, when Mom had Ivy alone for an hour. With trembling fingers, I clicked play on the first audio file. Gloria's voice filled the small room. Sit up straight, Ivy.
No, strate.
Do you want to end up with a hunch like your mother? No one will ever take you seriously if you slouch like that. Ivy's small voice responded. I'm trying, Grandma. Try harder. Your mother lets you get away with too much. It's why you're so undisciplined. I closed my eyes, imagining my daughter sitting alone with Gloria, absorbing these toxic words. There's more, Ren said quietly. So much more. For the next hour, we went through file after file. Gloria belittling me to other family members. Malcolm's explosive anger captured in terrifying clarity. The systematic way they undermined and controlled everyone around them. Why didn't you show me this before? I asked Ren. She looked away. I was scared and ashamed. I thought maybe if I collected enough evidence, I'd find the courage to do something about it. She met my eyes. I'm still scared, Elise. But after what happened to Ivy, I can't stay silent anymore. As we walked back to the main house, I heard raised voices coming from Malcolm's study. The door was ajar, and I couldn't help but pause. You assured me the transfer would be undetectable, Malcolm was saying, his voice tight, with controlled fury. If this gets out before the wedding. I moved closer, straining to hear. I don't care what it costs, he continued. Fix it.
Today.
Or everything falls apart. When he went silent, presumably listening to the person on the other end of the call, I slipped away. What was Malcolm hiding? And why was the timing of the wedding so important? That evening, I found myself alone with Katrina in the conservatory. Malcolm's fiancée was arranging flowers, her movements precise and nervous. Those are beautiful, I said, making her jump.
Oh, Elise, you startled me.
Katrina's smile was strained. Your mother taught me her arrangement technique. She has quite exacting standards. That's one way of putting it, I replied. Katrina's hands stilled on the stems. After a moment of hesitation, she said, I wanted to apologize for yesterday. The incident with Ivy. You weren't the one who hit her. No, but I didn't stop it either. She glanced toward the door, lowering her voice. Malcolm isn't always who everyone thinks he is. I studied her carefully. What do you mean? Katrina resumed her flower arranging, not meeting my eyes. Just that people show different faces to the world. The public Malcolm is charming, successful, confident. The private Malcolm is. She trailed off. Are you afraid of him? I asked directly. Her hands trembled slightly. The wedding is in 2 days. Everything is arranged. The investors will be there. It's too late to change course. It's never too late, I said gently. Katrina finally looked up at me, her eyes glossy, with unshed tears. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you're in too deep before you realize you're drowning. Before I could respond, the conservatory door opened, and Malcolm appeared. His eyes darted between us, suspicious. There you are, darling, he said to Katrina, his voice honeyed. Mother is looking for you. Something about the seating arrangement. Katrina immediately straightened, her vulnerable expression vanishing. Of course. I'll go right away. As she hurried past him, Malcolm caught her arm, squeezing it briefly. To anyone else, it might have looked like an affectionate gesture. I knew better. When she was gone, Malcolm turned to me. "Enjoying your stay, little sister?" "It's been illuminating," I replied carefully. He studied me for a moment, then smiled. The cold, calculated smile I'd come to dread.
Good.
Family is so important, isn't it? Especially when we remember our place in it. That night, lying in bed, memories flooded back unbidden. I was 12, and I'd received an award at school for a science project. I'd been so proud, rushing home to show my mother. Gloria had looked at the certificate and said, "If you spent half as much time on your appearance as you do on these little projects, you might actually make something of yourself." I remembered Malcolm at 16, holding my diary over my head, reading the most private passages aloud while Gloria watched, amused. "She needs to toughen up," she'd said when I began to cry. "The world won't coddle her like you do, Richard." My father had said nothing, just retreated to his study as he always did. The pattern was clear now. Gloria had pitted us against each other from the beginning. Malcolm, the golden child, could do no wrong. I was the scapegoat, the example of what not to be. And Wren, the forgotten middle child, had learned to make herself invisible to survive. A soft knock at my door pulled me from these thoughts. It was Danica, my cousin. "Got a minute?" she asked, slipping into the room when I nodded. Danica was Uncle James's daughter. James was Gloria's younger brother, who had died 5 years ago in a car accident. Since then, Danica had distanced herself from the family, showing up only for major events. "I saw what happened at lunch yesterday," she said without preamble. "With Ivy." I sighed. News travels fast. "It's not right, Elise. What they did, what they said, none of it is right." "I know that now," I said. "I think I always knew, but it's hard to trust yourself when you've been gaslit your entire life," Danica finished for me. She sat on the edge of my bed. "When my dad died, did you know Gloria contested his will?" This was news to me.
What?
"Why?" "Dad left everything to me. Gloria claimed he wasn't of sound mind, that as his older sister, she should manage his estate, for the family good. She almost won, too, until I found evidence that she'd tried to do the same thing to their mother years ago."
You zegt de her.
Grandma Louisa's will was changed? Danica nodded grimly. Mysteriously rewritten just months before she died. Everything went to Gloria instead of being split evenly between her and my dad, as Grandma had always planned. The next day, while Gloria was occupied with wedding preparations, I spent time with Ivy. We walked the grounds, keeping our distance from the main house. "Mom?" Ivy asked as we sat by the small pond at the edge of the property. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course, sweetie. Anything." She traced patterns in the dirt with a stick. "When you and Aunt Wren were talking to the photographer, Grandma told me that if I made any more mistakes, she would tell you to send me to boarding school. She said you'd do it because you can't raise me right." The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. "Ivy, look at me." I waited until her eyes met mine. "I would never, ever send you away. Not for anything. Grandma was wrong to say that, and it's not true. Promise." Her voice was small. "I promise." I pulled her into a tight hug. "You and me, we're a team. Always." Later, while Ivy was napping upstairs, I explored the house, looking for anything that might help me understand the financial situation Malcolm had been so worried about. In the library, I found an old photo album I'd never seen before. As I flipped through it, I noticed something odd. There were pictures of Gloria as a young woman with people I didn't recognize. On the back of one photo was written, "Gloria and Richard, with Elizabeth and Henry, 1973. Richard, my father's name. But who were Elizabeth and Henry? And why had I never heard of them? My exploration was interrupted by the sound of Ivy's voice. She was in the hallway outside talking to someone. "I found it in the drawer," she was saying. "It looks really old." I stepped into the hall to see Ivy holding a small leather-bound book. She was showing it to Wren, who looked concerned. "What did you find, Ivy?" I asked. She held up the book. "A diary. It was in the drawer of that table in the blue room. It has Grandma's name in it." I took the book carefully. Inside the cover was inscribed, Gloria Harrison, 1985. The year I was born. Where exactly did you find this? I asked Ivy. She led us to a small writing desk in one of the unused bedrooms. The drawer was stuck, but I wiggled it and it came open. Inside the drawer was a false bottom, cleverly disguised. Gloria had hidden the diary deliberately. That night, after Ivy was asleep, Ren and I read through the diary together in my room. What we found chilled us to the bone. I must break them early, Gloria had written. Richard was too soft with Malcolm, and look how that turned out. The boy has no control, no discipline. I won't make the same mistake with the girls. Better they learn now how cruel the world can be. Better they learn from me than be destroyed by someone else. Page after page detailed Gloria's deliberate campaign to toughen her daughters by breaking their spirits. The constant criticism, the public humiliation, the withdrawal of affection, all were calculated strategies, not uncontrollable outbursts. She did this on purpose, Ren whispered, horrified. All of it. The next entry made my blood run cold. Elise is too much like me. Too strong-willed, too sure of herself. She needs to be brought lower than the others. Richard says I'm too hard on her, but he doesn't understand. Iron must be forged in fire to be strong. I closed the diary, unable to read more. She's trying to do the same thing to Ivy, I said. The criticism, the threats about boarding school, it's the same pattern. Ren nodded, her face pale. What are we going to do? I thought of the recording from the lunch incident, of Ren's years of audio files, of Gloria's damning diary. I thought of Ivy's face when Malcolm struck her, and how everyone had laughed. We're going to stop it, I said, a plan forming in my mind. Not for revenge, but to break the cycle. For Ivy, for ourselves, for Katrina, for everyone they've hurt or will hurt. That night, I sat at my laptop and pulled up the recording from lunch. I watched it again, hearing Gloria's cold voice saying, she deserved it. Just like her mother, always looking for attention. Seeing the uncomfortable laughter ripple through the room. Watching my own frozen reaction. With trembling fingers, I uploaded the video anonymously to a local parenting group forum. Not the whole thing, just enough to show what had happened. No names, no faces clearly visible. Just the truth of what had occurred. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed, knowing that by morning, everything would begin to change. The truth, I whispered to myself in the darkness, is a powerful thing. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. Blinking away sleep, I checked the screen. 17 notifications, 5 missed calls, and dozens of text messages. My stomach dropped as I opened the first message. Is this your family? The text from Natalie, my reporter friend, included a link to the parenting forum where I'd posted the video last night. The post had exploded. Hundreds of comments flooded the thread, many from women sharing similar experiences of family trauma. The video had been viewed thousands of times already, and though I'd been careful not to show faces clearly, people from our community were connecting the dots. Mom, Ivy stood in the doorway, still in her pajamas. Are you okay? I quickly locked my phone. I'm fine, sweetie. Just some work emails. As we headed downstairs for breakfast, an unusual tension permeated the house. Gloria stood in the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear, her face flushed with anger. I don't care how you handle it, she hissed. Just get it removed.
Now.
She ended the call abruptly when she saw us. Good morning, she said stiffly. Morning, Mom, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Everything okay? Her eyes narrowed. A minor issue with the church. Nothing for you to worry about. Ren entered the kitchen, giving me a meaningful look. She'd seen it too. After breakfast, Malcolm stormed into the house, slamming the front door behind him. His face was thunderous as he cornered Gloria in the study. I lingered in the hallway, listening. Did you see what's happening online? He demanded. Someone recorded what happened with Ivy and posted it. Peterson Sporting Goods just pulled their sponsorship deal. Calm down, Gloria said sharply. I'm handling it. Handling it? My reputation is on the line. The wedding is tomorrow, for God's sake. I retreated quietly, processing what I'd heard. Malcolm's business was losing sponsors because of the video. The first consequences were already appearing. Later that morning, Ren found me in the garden where I was keeping Ivy occupied with a game of catch. Gloria was confronted at church, she whispered. Someone showed her the video on their phone and asked if that was how she treated her grandchildren. What did she say? I asked, keeping an eye on Ivy. Denied everything, of course. Called it a malicious fake. Ren twisted her hands anxiously. Elise, people are talking. The Williams family canceled their RSVP for the wedding. By afternoon, the situation had escalated. A local news website had picked up the story, running a piece about emotional abuse in wealthy families. They didn't name names, but the description was specific enough. Sources allege a prominent local businesswoman and her son were captured on video berating and physically disciplining a young child during a family gathering. Gloria called an emergency family meeting in the living room. Her face was tight with barely controlled fury as she paced before the fireplace. Someone in this family, she said, her voice dangerously quiet, has betrayed us. No one spoke. Ivy sat close to my side, sensing the tension. Malcolm stood by the window, his back rigid. Katrina perched on the edge of a chair, looking like she might bolt at any moment. Gloria's eyes locked onto mine. Was it you, Elise? Always the troublemaker. Always the one who couldn't just fall in line. I don't know what you're talking about, I said evenly. Don't play dumb, Malcolm snapped, whirling around. Someone recorded what happened with Ivy and posted it online. My business is suffering because of it. Maybe you should have thought about that before you hit a child, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Malcolm took a threatening step toward me. You little. Careful, Danica interrupted from the doorway. You wouldn't want another video circulating, would you? Malcolm froze, looking between us. You're in on this together. What matters, I said, standing up with Ivy's hand in mine, is that what happened was wrong. You hit my daughter, Mom laughed, and everyone in this family enabled it. It was discipline, Gloria insisted. Something you clearly know nothing about. I felt Ivy's small hand squeeze mine, giving me courage. No, it was abuse. The same abuse you've been dishing out for decades. How dare you? Gloria's voice rose. After everything I've done for this family, Mom, Ren said quietly, you know what you did, what you've always done. Gloria turned on her, eyes flashing.
Et tu, Oren?
I expected this from your sister, but you? I'm tired of being afraid, Ren replied, echoing what she'd told me days ago. Malcolm strode across the room, stopping just short of me. His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. If you think you can destroy this family, you're wrong. I'll make sure you regret this. As he spoke, he gave me a small shove, not enough to knock me over, but enough to intimidate. What he didn't notice was Danica in the doorway, her phone held discreetly at her side, recording everything. Is that a threat, Malcolm? I asked. It's a promise. Later that evening, Danica approached me as I was tucking Ivy into bed. I've been talking to a friend, she said once we were alone in the hallway. She's a lawyer who specializes in family cases. I'm listening. We might have grounds for a suit, Danica explained. Misuse of family funds, emotional harm to a minor. The evidence is mounting. What evidence? Danica smiled grimly. Remember when I told you Gloria contested my father's will? During that investigation, some financial irregularities came to light, but nothing concrete enough to pursue. Until now. She pulled out her phone and showed me an email. This came in anonymously this afternoon. It suggests Gloria altered her mother's will years ago, something I've suspected but couldn't prove. And there's more. The same source says there may be evidence that Gloria used Ivy's trust fund to cover Malcolm's business debts. What? I felt sick. My father set up that trust for Ivy's education. According to this, the paperwork is hidden somewhere in the estate. We find that and we have them. The next morning, while the house was busy with last-minute wedding preparations, Ivy and I explored the attic under the guise of looking for old family photos. What we found instead was a locked filing cabinet tucked behind a stack of trunks. Can we open it? Ivy asked, her detective instincts piqued. We need the key, I told her. But I think I know where Gloria might keep it. In Gloria's study, in the small antique jewelry box on her desk, the one place she thought no one would dare look, I found a ring of small keys. The third one fit the filing cabinet perfectly. Inside were folders of financial documents spanning decades. I photographed everything, my hands shaking with each revelation. There it was in black and white. Documents showing transfers from Ivy's trust fund to a shell company that fed directly into Malcolm's business accounts. Paperwork revealing the mysterious changes to Louisa Harrison's will. Evidence of tax evasion, fraud, and years of financial manipulation. As I carefully replaced everything and locked the cabinet, Ivy was exploring the other side of the attic. She'd found an old tape recorder and was pressing buttons, making it rewind and play. "Mom, listen," she called. I joined her as the tape began to play. Gloria's voice filled the dusty attic space. Some daughters are born to disappoint. Elise was broken from the start, too sensitive, too willful. At least Ren can be molded. But Elise. A heavy sigh. Richard thinks I'm too hard on her, but he doesn't understand what it takes to survive in this world. Ivy looked up at me, her eyes wide. "Is that Grandma talking about you?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "That's mean," Ivy said simply. "You're the best mom ever." That evening, I found Gloria alone in her study. I closed the door behind me and placed my phone on the desk between us, the recording app open. "We need to talk," I said. Gloria looked up, irritated. "I'm busy, Elise. The wedding is tomorrow, in case you've forgotten. I know what you did with Ivy's trust fund." Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about. I have the documents, Mom. All of them. The transfers to Malcolm's company, the altered will, everything." Gloria leaned back in her chair, studying me. "And what do you plan to do with this supposed evidence?" I played the recording of her words about me. "Some daughters are born to disappoint." Then I stopped it. "You really think this will destroy your own family?" Gloria asked, her voice cold. "Go ahead. See what happens." "This isn't about destroying the family," I replied. "It's about stopping the cycle of abuse. It's about protecting Ivy from becoming what I became, someone who thought they deserved the cruelty they received." Gloria's laugh was brittle. Dramatic as always. "I raised you to be strong." "No," I said quietly. "You raised me to be broken. There's a difference." That night, I met with Danica and Ren in the guest house. Together, we compiled all the evidence, the financial documents, Gloria's diary, the recordings of emotional abuse, and the video of Malcolm striking Ivy. "We have enough to go to a lawyer," Danica confirmed. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I thought of Ivy sleeping upstairs, of the look on her face when Malcolm hit her, of the years of pain Gloria had inflicted on all of us. "Yes," I said firmly. "For all of us." As dawn broke on what should have been Malcolm's wedding day, Katrina's car was gone. She had left in the night, leaving only a note that said, "I can't do this anymore." The cycle was beginning to break. The morning of Malcolm's wedding arrived with a perfect blue sky and an empty space where the bride should have been. The household erupted in chaos as Gloria realized Katrina was gone. "Find her," she commanded Malcolm, who paced the living room like a caged animal. "The guests will be arriving in hours." "She's not answering her phone," he snarled. "This is your fault, Elise. You got into her head." I said nothing, merely watched as the carefully constructed facade began to crumble. "The caterers are here," Ren announced from the doorway. "What should I tell them?" Gloria straightened her spine, her social mask slipping back into place. "Tell them to proceed as planned. I'll handle this." But there was nothing to handle. By noon, when guests began to arrive at the church, the news had spread. The wedding was canceled. Malcolm's fiancée had fled in the night, leaving no explanation beyond that cryptic note. While Gloria scrambled to save face, making calls and crafting a story about a mutual decision to postpone, I met with Danica's lawyer friend in town. Sarah Bennett was sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, reviewing our evidence with clinical precision. This is compelling, she said, tapping the folder of financial documents, particularly the misappropriation of the trust fund. That's not just a family matter, that's fraud. What's the next step? I asked. We file suit, Sarah replied. But you need to be prepared. This will get ugly. Family lawsuits always do. I'm ready, I assured her. Back at Heathrow, the cancelled wedding had created a power vacuum. Gloria was on the phone nonstop, trying to contain the damage to the family's reputation. Malcolm had disappeared, presumably to search for Katrina or to drown his humiliation in a bottle. I found Ivy and Wren in the garden, far from the house. Is the wedding cancelled? Ivy asked. Yes, I told her. Katrina decided she didn't want to marry Uncle Malcolm after all. Because he's mean? Ivy's perception was uncanny sometimes. That's part of it, I acknowledged. Sometimes people show their true colors and others realize they don't want to be around that kind of behavior. That evening, we received word that Malcolm had been detained by police. The financial improprieties we'd uncovered had triggered an investigation, and evidence of fraud was mounting. Gloria burst into my room without knocking, her face contorted with rage. What have you done? She demanded. Nothing that wasn't already done, I replied calmly. The truth has a way of coming out. They're questioning Malcolm about financial irregularities. They mentioned Ivy's trust fund. I met her gaze steadily. Maybe you shouldn't have stolen from a child. Gloria's hand flew up as if to strike me, then froze midair as she realized what she was doing. The mask had finally slipped completely. You will regret this, she whispered. When you have nothing and no one, remember it was your choice. I already have everything I need, I told her. I have Ivy. I have my freedom from you. And soon I'll have justice. The next morning, news broke that Malcolm Harrison, prominent local businessman, was under investigation for financial fraud. The church where Gloria had ruled as a social queen for decades quietly removed her from the charity board. Friends who had dined at her table for years suddenly had prior commitments when she called. Wren moved out of the guest room and into the guest house, telling her husband David that she needed space. He left without argument, perhaps sensing that the power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. I've called a real estate agent, Wren told me over coffee in the garden. I'm listing our house. Starting over. Where will you go? I asked. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. I don't know yet, but somewhere with light. Lots of light. 3 days after the wedding that never happened, we received an unexpected visitor. A tall, elegant woman in her 70s arrived at the front door, introducing herself as Meredith Williams, Gloria's estranged sister. I saw the news about Malcolm, she explained as we sat in the living room. And I heard rumors about a video showing unfortunate behavior toward a child. Gloria had refused to come downstairs when told who was visiting. The sisters hadn't spoken in nearly 20 years. Why are you here? I asked directly. Meredith's eyes were kind but shrewd. Because I recognized the pattern. What happened to your daughter, it happened to me, and to your mother, and to our mother before her. She told us about growing up with Gloria, about their mother's cruel lessons, about the competition and fear that had defined their childhood, about how Gloria had embraced the toxic legacy while Meredith had fled it, changing her name and starting a new life far away. The cycle goes back generations, Meredith explained. Each mother breaking her daughter, thinking she's preparing her for the world. Each daughter either becoming the same kind of mother or running away entirely. Until now, I said firmly. Meredith smiled sadly. Yes, until now. The lawsuit was filed the following week. The charges were clear: misappropriation of trust funds, financial fraud, and emotional harm to a minor. Gloria's initial response was righteous indignation, but as evidence mounted and Malcolm's legal troubles deepened, her position weakened. A forensic accountant discovered that Gloria had indeed altered her mother's will years ago, diverting the inheritance that should have been shared with her brother James. The revelation shattered what remained of her social standing. Malcolm, facing criminal charges, began to crack under pressure. In a desperate attempt to save himself, he offered to testify against Gloria, claiming she had orchestrated everything. The house of cards was collapsing. Before leaving Heathrow for what I knew would be the last time, I called a family meeting. Gloria sat rigidly at the head of the table, a queen without a kingdom. Malcolm was absent, still detained pending bail. Ren sat beside me, with Danica and Meredith completing our circle. "I've decided to sell my share of the estate," I announced. "As Dad's will specified, the property is divided equally between his children. I'm exercising my right to liquidate my portion." Gloria's face went white. "You can't. This house has been in the family for generations." My choice," I said simply. "I'm selling my share too," Ren added quietly. Gloria looked between us, something like fear flickering in her eyes for the first time. "Where will I go?" "That's not my concern," I replied. Then, turning to Ivy who stood in the doorway, I asked, "Is there anything you want to say before we leave, sweetie?" Ivy stepped forward, her small face solemn. "I know you don't like me, Grandma, and you don't like my mom, but that doesn't mean we deserve to be treated badly. Nobody deserves that." Out of the mouths of babes came the simple truth that had eluded our family for generations. We left Heathrow that afternoon, driving away from the grand house with its beautiful facade and ugly secrets. No dramatic scenes, no shouting matches, just a quiet, dignified exit. That night, in our hotel room, I wrote a letter to Gloria. Not for reconciliation or even for closure, but to mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. "I won't forgive you," I wrote. "Not because I can't, but because you haven't asked. You still don't believe you did anything wrong. But I'm not writing to change your mind. I'm writing to tell you this. I broke the cycle. Ivy will never feel what I did. She will grow up knowing she is worthy of love, respect, and kindness, not because she earned it, but because she exists. That is my victory, and nothing you say or do can take it away." I sealed the envelope, but didn't mail it yet. Some truths need to wait for the right moment. 3 months later, Ivy and I stood on the porch of our new home, a cozy cottage near the coast with a garden that rambled down to meet the edge of the beach. The air smelled of salt and possibilities. "What do you think?" I asked as Ivy explored the wraparound porch. "It's perfect," she declared, her face alight with excitement. "Can I have the bedroom with the window seat?" Of course. The lawsuit had been settled out of court. Gloria, faced with overwhelming evidence and Malcolm's betrayal, had conceded to our terms: restitution of Ivy's trust fund, plus interest, and a legally binding agreement to stay away from us. The money wasn't important, the freedom was. Malcolm had pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testimony against his business partners. His sentence was still pending, but his empire had crumbled. Last I heard, he was living in a small apartment on the other side of the state, working as a sales representative for someone else's company. Ren had filed for divorce from David and moved to a bright, airy loft downtown. She'd reconnected with her passion for interior design and was taking classes at the local college. We spoke almost daily now, rebuilding the sisterhood that Gloria had systematically destroyed. "Aunt Ren is coming at noon," I reminded Ivy as we unpacked boxes in the kitchen. "She's bringing lunch. And her design stuff for my room?" Ivy asked eagerly. "That's the plan." As I arranged dishes in the cabinets, my phone rang. It was Sarah Bennett, our lawyer. "Just checking in," she said. "How's the new place?" "It's wonderful. Peaceful. Exactly what we needed." "I've got something that might interest you," Sarah continued. "Natalie Evans from the Tribune reached out. She's working on a series about generational trauma and family dynamics. She wondered if you might be willing to consult, not to share your personal story necessarily, but to offer insights." I paused, considering. "Let me think about it." After we hung up, I wandered out to the porch, where Ivy was drawing the ocean view. The weight that had pressed on my chest for as long as I could remember had finally lifted. I could breathe here, really breathe. The doorbell rang, announcing Ren's arrival. She bounded up the steps, arms full of paint samples and fabric swatches, looking younger and lighter than she had in years. "Wait till you see what I found for Ivy's room," she exclaimed, spreading her treasures across the porch table. a canopy for above her bed, like a tent of stars. Ivy clapped with delight, and the two of them bent over the samples, discussing colors and patterns with equal enthusiasm. Later, after a lunch of sandwiches and fresh fruit on the porch, Wren and I sat watching Ivy collect shells on the beach below. "I got a client," Wren announced. "A real one, with a real budget." "That's amazing."
Who? She grinned.
"You're looking at her."
Me.
"I'm renovating my loft, and I'm hiring myself to do it properly. Professional portfolio building." I laughed. "That's brilliant." And she added more seriously, "I was hoping you might help with some of the architectural elements, if you have time." "I'd love to," I said, meaning it. Working with my sister, creating something beautiful together, it felt right. The summer passed in a blur of beach days, unpacking boxes and settling into our new rhythm. Ivy started at a new school in September, joining the theater club almost immediately. Her teacher called after the first week. "Ivy is quite remarkable," Ms. Davis told me. "She's bright, empathetic, and surprisingly fearless for a new student." Fearless. The word echoed in my mind long after the call ended. That was the difference between Ivy's childhood and mine. She wasn't afraid, not of making mistakes, not of being herself, not of the people who should love her most. In October, I found a letter in our mailbox with no return address. I recognized Gloria's handwriting immediately. For a moment, I considered throwing it away unopened, but curiosity won out. Inside was a single page, filled with Gloria's precise script. "I will not apologize. I did what was necessary to prepare you for a cruel world. If you choose to coddle Ivy, that is your mistake to make. I raised you to be strong, whether you appreciate it or not. Now I sit alone in an empty house while you've turned my own family against me. I hope you're satisfied with what you've done." No greeting, no signature. Just bitterness and self-justification. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. There was no anger anymore, just a quiet sadness for a woman who could never see beyond her own pain to recognize the damage she had inflicted. I didn't respond. Some conversations are better left ended. That evening, while helping Ivy with her homework, I noticed an essay she was working on. The title caught my eye, "The Strongest Person I Know." "Can I read it?" I asked. Ivy nodded, suddenly shy. "It's about you." I sat on the edge of her bed and began to read. "The strongest person I know is my mom. Not because she can lift heavy things or because she never gets scared. She gets scared sometimes, and that's okay. She's strong because she knows how to be kind even when other people aren't kind to her. She's strong because she protects me but also teaches me to protect myself. She's strong because she broke a chain that was hurting people for a long time, even though it was really hard. My mom shows me that being strong doesn't mean being perfect or never crying. It means doing the right thing even when it hurts. That's why she's my hero." Tears filled my eyes as I finished reading. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to cry, not from pain or anger, but from release. "Is it good?" Ivy asked anxiously. I pulled her into a hug. "It's perfect. You're perfect." The following weekend, Wren joined us for a walk along the beach. The November air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue above the gray-green waves. Ivy ran ahead, chasing seagulls and collecting treasures. "I mailed my letter to Gloria yesterday," Wren said as we walked. "Not an angry one, just final." "What did you say?" She smiled sadly. "That I forgive her, not for her sake but for mine, and that I won't be coming back." I nodded, understanding completely. How did it feel? Like putting down something very heavy that I've been carrying for too long. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, watching Ivy dance at the edge of the waves. "Do you think we'll be okay?" Wren asked suddenly. "Really okay, I mean, after everything?" I considered the question seriously. "I think we already are. Not perfect, not unscarred, but okay in all the ways that matter." The sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Ivy rejoined us, slipping her small hand into mine as we turned back toward the cottage. No more pretending. No more pain. Just three people walking toward home as the light changed around them. They tried to break me the way they were broken. But I broke the chain instead. And that changed everything. What generational pain are you silently carrying, and at what point does protecting yourself become more important than preserving family facades? If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more narratives that explore the complex battlegrounds of family relationships and the courage it takes to break destructive cycles.